According to Barbara Wexler and Melinda Arben-Leitner, about 227,000 women are diagnosed with breast cancer yearly. In addition, breast cancer is the leading cause of death in women in America. Unfortunately, this illness also stole the life of my paternal grandmother before I had the opportunity to meet her. Today I would like to share with you my grandmother's background, the time period in which she lived, her many life accomplishments, as well as some of her life stories. My grandmother lived a short but quality-filled life and was able to accomplish many things during her lifetime. My grandmother's life began in the state of Kansas. She was born Judy Ann Williams in the city of Topeka, Kansas in the year of 1951. Her mother was named Irma Jean Clark Williams. Her biological father was not active in her life, therefore she was raised and took the name of her stepfather, Larry Williams. Her mother's ethnicity was both African American and Native American, and her biological father was of African American, Native American, and Caucasian descent. She was one of 3 siblings. Her siblings were named Cynthia Marie Williams and Larry Williams Jr. My grandmother experienced some hard times throughout her childhood due to being sexually abused by a close family member. This caused her personality to be somewhat shy and standoffish. However, she was truly a kind-hearted person and would love to help anyone. Her stepfather, Larry Williams, served in the United States military, which caused the family to move from Topeka, Kansas, to California, where he was stationed. After spending her younger childhood years in the city of Topeka, Kansas, my grandmother and her family relocated to California, where she spent the rest of her childhood and all of her adult life. She lived the majority of her life in the city of San Bernardino, California. She enjoyed living in California and especially enjoyed going to the beach. Although my grandmother was very young at the time, she still did live during the time of the Civil Rights Movement. According to Robert Samuel and Dawson Barrett, the later Civil Rights Movement had great impact on the ethnic community during the years of 1950 through 1960. Although my grandmother was very young at this time, she still did live through this time of major racism. Being a woman of biracial descent had a negative impact on any woman in America, including my grandmother. However, my grandmother was still successful at building a meaningful life. Once my grandmother was settled in California, she worked diligently to provide for her family. According to Africa Romero, my grandmother graduated from San Bernardino High School and shortly after began a family of her own. She married her first husband, Richard Howard, and about 2 years afterwards had her first child, Africa Romero. A little over a year later, my dad, Shandu Howard, was born. Both pregnancies were explained to be very difficult. Africa Romero stated my grandma was required to have a cesarean section for both pregnancies. Africa was born at 5 pounds and my father was born at 3 pounds. My grandmother wanted to have more children, but the doctors advised her not to due to her pregnancy complications. Although my grandmother was unable to afford a further education after completing high school, she enjoyed doing hair and wished to complete a degree in cosmetology. In order to provide for her family, my grandmother worked numerous jobs and held many positions in management. She exceeded in everything she did and was able to excel in any position that she held, including insurance, department stores, and even customer service. Although my grandmother worked hard to live a quality life for her family in California, her life ended very soon afterwards. Some may say that my grandmother had a hard life, but if my grandmother was alive today, I believe she would describe her life as being blessed. My grandmother was a strong believer in Jesus Christ, and although she may have went through some hardships, she allowed God to deliver and heal her from her life issues. My Aunt Africa told me a story about my grandmother before she passed. She described one of the last times she spent with her. My grandmother, my dad, and my aunt, and other family members took a family trip to Santa Monica Beach. They had an amazing time there. My Aunt Afrika described that experience as being free. She also explained the memorable scenery. The ocean seemed never ending, the sand was blowing in the wind, and the birds were flying high in the sky. Shortly afterwards, my aunt and father found out that my grandmother was ill with breast cancer. My dad was about 11 at the time, and my Aunt Afrika was 12. For a long time, my grandmother kept the fact that she was severely ill from her children because she did not want to worry them. On March 3rd, 1986, my grandmother, Judy Ann Williams, passed away from breast cancer at the City of Hope Hospital in California. Although my grandmother passed away at an early age, her spirit will continue to live on. Today I have shared with you the background of my grandmother, from her birth to Kansas to her death in California. I also discussed the time period for which she lived, the difficulties she may experience through her life. In addition, I have shared with you the many accomplishments of my grandmother before her unfortunate death. My grandmother's life was full of strength, love, and God. Now when I go to the Santa Monica beach, I can feel both my father's as well as my grandmother's spirit blowing in the wind with the sand. Yes, my grandmother was one of the 227,000 women diagnosed with breast cancer yearly. However, I am content to know she lived a quality life and she continues to live within me.